Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022, and this is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee. We are meeting at Gloucester High School at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road. Consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there's a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. I will state that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I ask that you stand.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mayor will likely not be with us tonight. He had a conflict. Ron and Melissa Sarah Prince is joining us on the screen. Okay, comments from the chair. I just want to announce that the Gloucester High School class of 2022 has their graduation this Sunday. The forecast looks great.
Did you know I just checked it moments ago?
Excellent, and it's at 1:30 in the afternoon at on the field. And so if the public wants to come and cheer on and celebrate all the accomplishments of these students, they're welcome to come. It's a good time. We will move on to recognitions. I'll just continue just to say that the seniors had their prom last Friday night. It was my first promenade, which I don't know why I never went, but now that I had somebody in it, it was just a magical event, I think, for the kids and for the people that attend. I understand why people go year after year, whether they have a student doing it or not, because get to see everybody all dressed up and what the girls are wearing. And just a lot of fun, good activities for the end of year. Anything to add? Mr. Brown?
No, I just, echo that. It was a great night. We went to Georgetown to Black Swan for the evening after doing the promenade here in the field house. We had some new folks running things for the promenade and kept up the high standards that we've had in the past, but it was really well attended. It was really great to see so many people in there. Superintendent Lomas was particularly excited. He said afterwards, similar to you, about attending the spectacle of it all. Other people, there were at least half a dozen other people for whom it was their first time as well, and they thought it was spectacular. Right, some pretty crazy outfits, really high, creative stuff from the kids, and then we had a great night in Georgetown as well. A great and safe night. We started a new tradition this year where, when thanks to a donor, Rockport Mortgage, we had ice cream for the high school students when they got back here. So Officer Scola, our SRO, distributed ice cream to kids as they got off the limos and buses and so on. So it was like little kids out there after their prom night eating ice cream right out here out front. It was really a great way to end the evening.
I think I said, Mr. Cook, that we should do it every week.
You did say that. You did say that. That would be a little much, but yes.
Anybody else have any other recognition?
Yeah, two things. One is just on the prom. After the prom, I looked at all the pictures on Facebook and I said, obviously the young ladies look wonderful and all that, but I said, the real difference is the guys. The guys just look really sharp. These kids know how to dress. They have style. I think the proms I went to the tux from Mr. Tux, ruffles and a cummerbund of some sort. Look terrible compared to these kids with the European cut suits and looking great.
So it's a long way from what you want to wear, I think, Sheldon.
So good for them. Good on the boys. I know it's all, the girls get first dibs on that, but the boys I thought looked outstanding. So but the other acknowledgement for me was the elementary school band. Just to see that is phenomenal. Young kids interested in music, and the people behind that, the music educators, and believe the GEF has helped with that. So certainly worth seeing, and it's really, really great to see. So.
I'd just like to second that on the elementary band. Jamie Klopotowski is the elementary band director with the support of a $65,000 grant from the Gloucester Ed Foundation to provide the instruction in the afternoon. The program has been, had a tough time the last couple of years, and it was very important to rebuild the number of students coming into the middle school. So the Monday night elementary band concert, I think there are 40 kids from all 5 elementary schools in 4th grade and 40 in 5th grade. The energy was incredible. They really did a great job. And then Tuesday, last night, a number of us, superintendent was there, Lynn was there for the 8th grade stage band. And the
All grades on the stage band.
oh, sorry, the 8th grade lab, which was a group of students who maybe hadn't learned an instrument before or had taken a break, but really needed a lot of work. They were incredible. The vocals were terrific. It was a lot of fun. And then the stage band was afterward. And I think there are over 80 students involved.
Altogether, I think we're about there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think over 80 students, and there might have been, near that, all packed onto that stage.
And Sunday night, we had the jazz band. too,
Yeah.
So they had to split it because there were so many kids involved.
Yeah, so, 3 days worth of really great music. And I have to say Carlos Menezes, and I don't have the program in front of me because there's a long list of instructors and supporters, and people who were there, for photographing and sound mixing. It's just, there were so many people who came together to make that. But the best thing about it all was the incredible energy. I mean, they were just whooping and hollering and so happy to be in person. And the music was fantastic. It was really good.
I have a couple more. I wanted to give a shout out to Dawn Enos. If anybody is connected with Gloucester sports at all, you know Dawn Enos, who takes pictures of almost every sport. She, I believe, does all of the individual players and their team pictures. She helps create the banners for senior night. She is just everywhere, and this is all volunteer. And the quality of her photos. I mean, if you ever tried to catch your kid in any action shot, it's nearly impossible, but she gets phenomenal photos, and then she'll post them all on Facebook. So, depending upon the team, she's done JV, she's done varsity, as they say, she does practically every sport, and all because she loves it. So I just wanted to give her a shout out because she really is quite an asset to our schools in a volunteer way. And the other one I want to mention is winners of the Poetry Without Paper contest. They had many people submit from Gloucester Middle School, O'Malley Innovation Middle School, and the high school. So the awards for first place went to Olivia Hogan Lopez from Gloucester High School, 12th grade. O'Malley Innovation Middle School winners are first place was Emma Wilt, an 8th grader. Esme Saruf, also an 8th grader. Alina Brown, a 7th grader. Then we have some elementary. We have Bianca Numerosi, who was a 4th grader at Plum Cove, and Jack Fritzen, who is a 2nd grader at West Parish. So it's nice that the community has these kids, challenge themselves and submit their work.
Tomorrow evening at the Sawyer Free Library, the award winners and those students are also honorable mention are being recognized at the Sawyer Free at 6 o'clock tomorrow. So tomorrow's a busy night on a lot of levels. Plum Cove is also having their Annie Kids performance. And Beeman is having their learning demonstration night too. Poetry Without Paper folks are at Sawyer Free.
Okay, so, I did recognitions before oral communications. My apologies if there's anybody attending who would like to speak under oral communications. You will have up to 3 minutes, and you must state your name and address for the record. School committee chair will not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. I think I covered the gist of the rules on oral communication. So if there's anybody who is in attendance who would like to speak, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Anybody have any items they would like to remove? Okay, we have a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Okay, Maria, may we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason. Yeah. Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
yes,
Okay, motion passes 6-0. We will move on to deliberations on educational issues. First, we have an update on the CBTE program at Gloucester High School. Principal Cook.
Thank you. If you could, yes.
Sorry.
No. Words were just about to come out of my mouth. That you could do.
You want to start?
Sure, yeah, I'll start talking about it. So it was really interesting in preparing this report to look back last year when I gave this report, and how different things were. The emphasis last year was on how we emerge out of COVID year. What are the variations that we had to do over the course of the 2020-2021 year, in order to keep programs going in that hybrid form, and then what we were looking ahead to do. And it was really great to look back on having done so many of the things that we said we would do last year. So that will be the focus of today. I will so talk about each shop as well as the vocational program overall, and I will say a few things about bringing on a director of CBTE beginning July 1st, which is really we've been working on throughout this year, and that we'd set up last year. So for folks who are new to these presentations, we currently have 4 Chapter 74 CBTE programs. These are, so we have other courses that we offer that are vocational in nature, but they're not fully developed Chapter 74 programs. Our 4 programs are advanced manufacturing, also called machine technology, automotive technology, carpentry technology, and electricity technology. I'll talk about each one in the presentation. So these are some highlights, some things that have happened this year. Back in the fall, we had our NEASC accreditation visit, as you folks know, and our CBT programs were a key aspect of that visit because those programs exemplify our vision of the graduate, in a more real clear way that is easy to show folks. Our CBT programs involve problem solving, communication, and collaboration every day for our students. So it was one of the places that we showcased in our successful NEASC accreditation visit. In the fall, we also had our annual Perkins Grant approved. I'll talk a little bit more about how we used that this year. As you know, we were tasked this year with revising our admissions policy to be inclusive. And that's something that DESE required of all CBT programs. We continued with an open house here at the high school and course selection meetings that featured our CBTE programs. In April, we found out that for the second time, we got a 3-year grant from Lyon-Wa through GEF, another $150,000 for the auto program. In the spring of 2022, we also were able to hire a CBTE director, Brenda Waslick, who will begin July 1st. And that's through grant funding as well, through an anonymous donor that we worked got connected with through GEF as well. And in spring 2022, the admission policy was approved, and we've used it. We've use the policy, and I'll say a little bit more about that as later slides. So that's a kind of an overview of the year. All right, so I think jump. Here, there, yes, thank you. So focusing on advanced manufacturing for a moment. Our sustainable improvements and innovations there. This year was our year of implementing the new computer lab and classroom. So we used Perkins funds last year to modernize our computer lab and advanced manufacturing classroom. One of the real practical things is students now have 2 monitors that allow them, they use one monitor to watch or read directions, the learning of something that they're then applying in the other screen. So they're using the software for design while also being able to go back and consult the directions. It's a really cool, process where, it's the teacher is asked a question and the teacher can direct the student to sort of look that up on their own, which, adds that layer that we want of independence for high school students. Instead of just asking the teacher and getting an answer how to fix something, they're directed to where they can fix it while not closing out that window. And, they're then able to continue to work with SolidWorks. Really interesting things in my observations of the class. Also, by updating the computers in there, the SolidWorks is just a lot easier to use and interface with the machines on the floor of the lab, right? So they're saving things, the flash drive, and bringing it out to the milling equipment and the other equipment on the floor of the advanced manufacturing to actually create things. This summer, we'll be continuing our advanced manufacturing expansion program. Per the general GE grant, foundation grant that we have for Cape Ann, recent graduates and other adults to get training in advanced manufacturing. So we'll keep that shot rolling even through the summertime. In the next slide, you can see what the double monitor setup looks like. And you can see, the wonderful lighthouses that the kids make every year. That is, so right monitor, right, has the, information about the how-to. They're designing with SolidWorks on the left monitor, and then on the floor, they're producing products such as the one you see on the right there. The next slide, we move on to auto tech. Again, we had that second 3-year gift from Lion Wall. This funding supports a second auto teacher, which means we can accept 30 students every fall instead of just 15 students. So that's a state requirement, 15 per teacher. We're able to have 30 students, and we have accepted 30 students the year coming. You'll see that later as well. It also means, and something I've observed, is that the instruction at all levels, from the 1s all the way up to the level 4 students, can be more differentiated. So Mr. Mashel is working with this student on brakes, while these students are preparing to dismantle an engine related to the same project over here. And then they can rotate the students, right? So you have 3 or 4 kids, 6 kids that get are listening and then doing, or watching and then doing. And they get many more, reps or many more opportunities to take to participate than they would if we just had a single teacher in that class. And that's something that I've been able to observe directly. It's been really great to see this year. The Lion Wall grant also has supported some of the tools and materials. You'll see it a little bit later. This year, with our Perkins grant funds that I mentioned earlier, we purchased diagnostic scanners. So in your average car, 85% of what's there is diagnosed with a scanner. It's computer diagnosed with a scanner. And students, to be industry ready to work, they need to know how to read those. The particular kind of scanners, I was told down in the shop today, there's only one shop on Cape Ann other than our auto shop that has the same level of tech with the scanners we're in, because they're brand new, right? You're able to.
You're saying one professional shop has.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yep. So these were great to see in action as well, seeing students diagnosing and then, right, with this, the diagnostic scanners, and then actually applying that to fixing problems that arise. Also, when you have an expansion of a program, you add students, you need basic tools. You need the wrenches, you need the ratchets, you need all that stuff. So we used Perkins grant funding this year to also help us expand the program. And you'll see that in the picture slides that come up next. All right, you'll see some of our students, Sam, Ryan, and Austin, are showing off the tools that we were able to add to expand help expand our program. They were happy to show it off, show them off. They're in the Auto 3 and 4 program. In the next slide, you'll get to see the scanning, how the scanners come. So they're portable around the shop. On the right, that is another thing we purchased this year, which is a rotisserie. Right? You can flip the car upside down or back up to work on it in different ways. So you can see doing some work there. The rotisserie, it was fun to see that in action. So that's some of what we've been able to upgrade this year. And then just like in the machine, we're implementing past purchases. So the students, the thing they were really excited to talk to me about was the tire changer and the Road Force tire balance. It's something they're able to use on a regular basis this year that we purchased last year. Now it's fully implemented into the curriculum for this year. So that's auto tech. In the next slide, you'll get to take a glimpse at our carpentry tech program. In carpentry tech, the way that we're approaching carpentry is through skill building, how parts relate to the whole, and on meeting needs. So you can see, I could show windows, but here I'm showing the staircase. I'm showing some other work, cabinetry work that the students are doing. I'm working on different roofs. They're working on other aspects, the parts that go into the whole, and with each one, they're building different kinds of skills that go into that, whatever that part is over the course of the year, and they're building them from the carpentry program level 4. But they're not only doing that, they're also responding to some of the needs in our school and in our community. So you can see a picture there from I could have chosen, there were 5 different projects over the course of the year in our nurse's office that the students in the carpentry program helped them with. There you can see some shelving they built in to make better use of the space. They built other shelving as well, some other things for our nurse, and also from our carpentry program, the beautiful new arch at the promenade was also recently built by our carpentry program. So that's a little bit about skill building, the parts that go into the whole, and then meeting some needs that the community has, using their skills to do that. Really exciting in electricity. Today was the day that I got to go around with Bob Devlin and take a look at where we are with the solar power canopy project, with a projected completion next spring. This is one of the things I talked about last year as something to get started on this year. Up to this point, the students are, what you're seeing here is the ceiling of the auto shop, where what you're seeing here is the conduit for wiring. And the exciting thing here that Bob was talking about is how the students learned to bend, right? You can see the bends, I don't know how well you can see the picture there, but here and here, they're having to bend the pipes around what's existing in there. And that's all skills that the students developed, and he was really impressed with. He was really worried that they'd be able to pull this off, and they did a really good job. And it looks elegant in there. It's really, you wouldn't know that it was something that students just created and put up. So they're putting in some of the infrastructure that next year they'll be able to continue with the project. The next slide gives you a glimpse of where it will be. So if you look essentially between the white vertical stripes there to the left and to the right of the auto entrance, the carpentry shop will be building canopies that will have the solar panels on them. And another part of the project will be rewiring the auto shop to the right. If you look to the right of that opening, part of the project will also rewire that area. And again, it's a collaboration of all our shops. Machine tech are doing some of the pieces. I said carpentry, building canopies. Auto is hosting and using the electricity and some labor that they put into it as well. And then the main bulk of the project is our electrical students learning solar installation.
So where the canopies go, they attach?
Yeah, they'll be attached off here. Yeah, exactly. And so there's all collaboration with the provider and with engineers to make sure that it's secure. That was one of the things Mr. Devlin and I were talking about today. So that's a really exciting project that will, benefit our school, and it'll look really cool when it's ready. The other part of that is other folks doing these canopies is unusual and presents unusual problems. Most of the installation is roof-based, right? And so our students will be learning some of what goes along with having the solar panels being run off of the canopies. All right, I wish I could remember the differences between that, but Mr. Devlin knows and did tell me today, but there are a lot of details. All right, so you can take a look here at our enrollment. So this is really exciting. You could see our advanced manufacturing and machine tech. We increased this year by 2 students, and next year are increasing again with an additional 6 students overall and a full 15 students as first-year students. Our automotive tech, this year we returned to our pre-pandemic level with again, another increase for next year, significant increase next year based on selections at this point. Carpentry tech, I can also see a return this year to pre-pandemic levels with a further increase in selections for next year. Carpentry tech, and then really exciting with electricity. This year we went pretty significantly above our pre-pandemic levels with a further increase in electricity next year, all based on students from O'Malley and other students in the high school choosing to be first-year students. We would have a full, all of our first-year students would be full. If any of those students drop, there is a wait list. So students from the wait list would be invited to come fill those spots if any student decides not to go forward in the fall, or if they come off later in the year as well.
How big is the wait list? Do you know?
Yes, it's about 17, I think, when I looked at it last. Yeah.
In total?
Total for all the
programs.
shops. Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
So all the shops have been maxed out.
Yes, yeah, the enrollment, they're right now all maxed out. So when actually the next slide, you can see, so automotive tech, we had 42 students select auto as their first choice. We ran the lottery and placed 30 students, the lottery that is part of the admissions. For electricity, which jumped above carpentry tech, that's where we've seen the greatest increase. 29 students had that as their first choice, with 15 students, the maximum placed. Carpentry tech 27, 15 placed. And advanced manufacturing, only 9 students selected that as their first choice, but other students had it as their second choice. And if they didn't get in one of the other shops, we were able to add students there to fill out the advanced manufacturing shop as well. We know that with our director coming in, that one of the things we need to do is education around it, advanced manufacturing. Like we know that's one of our lifts. We had a lot of momentum there pre-pandemic, and we're looking to get back to it, especially with Brenda Waslick picking up the director role starting July 1st. Because just do a tour of that shop and realize how interesting it is. This is exactly the kind of thing a lot of kids are into. Design, right? Using technology, designing, and then making something as well. It has all those combinations for kids.
James,
Laura has a question.
was everyone placed into a first or second choice, or are there students who were not?
There are students who are on the wait list,
So who didn't get into a first or
who
second?
didn't get into a first, second, or third choice.
Oh, wow, okay, those are the 17. like you
Yep.
said.
Exactly. Yeah, and some people opted not to be on the wait list, right? So you don't all go
Okay.
onto the wait list. So that's what I counted right before this. It might be changed, but we're still building the schedule, so It could, for all I know, be 18 this moment because of a counselor doing work with kids, but
Right.
that's where it was, yeah.
Two quick questions, James. One is, and you've probably told us this 10 times, retention rate, what is the retention, I mean, the kids?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, it very much varies, and there is a significant, when students have to move, so first year they have one course, one block of their 7-block day. Their second year they have 2, and their third and fourth year they have 3 of their 7 blocks in the shop. So we tend to see it about cut in half about by the time they get to the 3rd and 4th year from who came in. And that's another thing that in our plan moving forward, we want to be able to retain students, because our plan is 4th year students should be going out into the workplace, right? And then we're able to keep fit, you know, whether it's 30 or 50, you know, 30 in auto, 15 in the other shops, maintain that 15. If we maintain students, we will have too many kids their senior year, but that's where job placement, which we do now, but we want that to be nearly universal for our 4th year students going forward.
Which dovetails into my second point is, it sounds like we do job placement now, and like I wrote down, what are we doing to connect kids to local manufacturers, CNC machine shops?
So we have folks come in and present to our students. We also have, through the GE grant, we have connections to folks there, and we have the advisories for each shop that have industry representation on them, and they advise us. That's how we're able to, not just with the know-how of the teacher plus the advisory, allow us to make sure we're purchasing what we need to be preparing students for industry, right? So those are the other connections. So folks come into classes and give talks about careers in the field and local opportunities. We connect kids, again, through the advisories, have more explicit connections. And then throughout the year, we have students at our level 4 programs placed. So they're actually working for the second half of the day. EF and G block, they're out of the building at their job sites.
Yes, Melissa, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you. First, I just want to say, James, I commend you for the progress that is being made in these programs. You promised me and the committee years ago that you were going to put a big effort into these programs, and it's really starting to show, and that makes me very, very excited. My one question is, are the students in these programs, are they keeping portfolios? I know you've talked about projects they're working on. Are they keeping track of the projects they're working on with documentation so that when they leave the high school with their certifications, they have something to present to a potential employer?
That's something that the director, so our new director and I were talking about. Her background is in graphic design. Her portfolios are unbelievable. They're so great. So yes, we have some of that, Melissa, but I wouldn't say that it's one of the strengths yet of our programs, right? I would say the strength is like walking into the shop and seeing the work kids are doing on a daily basis. So one of the things about bringing Brenda on in particular of any candidate is she has tremendous expertise in that area. Her materials are just, right, really, yeah, it's what she does, right? So that's something that's really exciting, that she'll be able to add that and bring that to each of the shop teachers for whom that might not be, it isn't their area of expertise, right? So that's something that I know you had mentioned previously and that I talked to Brenda about already. So I'm excited. Hopefully, next year at this time, we'll be looking at some of student created materials in this presentation.
Great, thank you. I can't wait to meet her. Looking forward to it.
James, so with the auto tech, I'm curious to know, how does somebody get a car in there? I mean, is there a selection process? If the instructor is saying, hey, we need to learn about this kind of problem, let's find a car with that problem.
So what we've done during COVID and kept doing in this year is we're working on donation cars right now.
Yeah.
We haven't opened back up yet.
Mhm.
And so that'll be one of the things that I work on with Brenda and with Mr. Porter and Mr. Mashel about when we open back up again, how do we open back up again? Because it's been a little while, and then we have some more oversight with our new director. So So stay tuned. I'll
Yeah,
be,
okay.
I'll be
So
able
it might
to.
be different than before.
It might be different than before, exactly. And when we think it was, we've learned some things. I know Jack and Bud, Mr. Porter, Mr. Mashel have some ideas about that. Because one of the things about the donations and the cards, they can work on as you were saying, they can work on particular things
Yeah.
based on these donations.
Yeah.
As opposed to just relying on whatever comes
So
in.
that rotisserie thing was quite amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of like body work as
Right.
well.
That's right.
I have a question. So if someone's a freshman and they're moving on to a sophomore, can they apply to?
Yes,
jump in the
They can,
programs?
yep, and they're treated, as long as they can have 2 years. Seniors are, so sophomores, yes, juniors, yes, can apply. Rising sophomores, rising juniors apply to the program, and we have some of those. And they're treated, the admissions is blind to that, we don't prefer one to another. I had a few. There were a few more slides?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just,
I wanted to make sure we didn't lose the vision for, what.
Second, sorry, I thought I was doing this very efficiently.
It's okay, I can talk, I can
It's
talk.
the opposite.
It's a lot of words, the pictures are over, it's a lot of words left. You wanna,
Nope, here we go.
okay, you got it, all right. So, last year, we set as our primary long-term goals for CBT at GHS and for Gloucester overall, that we would continue to strengthen and grow our existing programs, but also expand CBTE to add a program or programs that enroll more students in a broader range of students. So you may remember that. So that's one of the goals of bringing on a director. So right now, we have a sustainable improvement plan that involves the equipment, the curriculum, and learning opportunities. We partner with O'Malley, present our programs, so students apply to them. As you've seen, we've had quite a bit in terms of application. And then we maintain industry and community partnerships with our advisory committees. So what we want to do is we want to strengthen our communication with students and families about our programs. We want, and particularly advanced manufacturing is one that lags behind. Create more of those industry partnerships, Bill, that you were talking about with internships and co-ops, and then create more articulation agreements with some post-secondary institutions, as well as be able to track what happens to our graduates better. And that's something that is, we need some administrative capacity to do that we'll have with the director. So that's our goal, our first goal. Oh, yes, maximizing funding, it's that one. I have the bar of all your faces under. So goal 2, expand the CBT with the additional program or programs. So to do that, we have to explore a new cost-effective program for students who are not being served by our current programs, which would include practical nursing or health assisting. There are some other programs we'd be looking at as well, but those are cost-effective. They don't take a lot of infrastructure investment and would really serve students that are not currently, the area of interest that isn't currently being served not only by our CBT programs, but isn't being served elsewhere in our curriculum. To do that, we need to conduct market research by working with the Mass Hire Workforce Board, see what students want, then design that program, develop a budget for it, identify what staffing will be needed, seek grants to support this expansion and partnerships as well. So for job opportunities there, and then we would need to establish program advisory committees just like we have for the other programs. And along the way, we work with Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School that's a requirement that is, and we would anyway, but it's a requirement of expanding. So our likely timeline, year 1 would be, this is for that second goal, doing the background research in the market, what are students interested in, identifying funding, so that hopefully in year 2, we would be able to apply for a new program. We would have to finalize what's needed financially, set up the facilities and equipment, meaning identify the room and the space in the school where a new program could be housed, develop that program of studies so students can apply for it, hire the personnel to work in the program, finalize those agreements with industry to place students, and make sure we follow up on graduates so that in year 3, we could actually enroll students in this program. That year too is really important, working very closely with DESE for approval. There are a lot of things we can't just do it on our own. We have to get approval for it. So that's why I've outlined those steps here.
So next year's year one. And while this is happening to expand the program, bring out at least a new program, all the strengthening continues. As James already said, I have a lot more leadership and resources, human resources to do that strengthening as well. One piece of that, just to chime in on the strengthening and the partnerships is, so we're about to get going in a concrete way on connecting the CBT students program with the EGS Vets building project. So that hopefully happen on two levels. One, in the shorter term, building a shed that they need built. And then throughout next year, hopefully having carpentry and electrical technology involved at the school building. So we're hoping to do that. It's not in place yet, but definitely a lot of interest from private team and then WW.
Two questions. I can't remember if the director who is being hired is a time limited hire or if this is a.
So right now we have 1 year of funding on the through a knowledge donor, the GIA helped us to acquire, and then plans to put that on the operating budget next year. I mean, FY 24. So that's the plan here, and we're going to make it happen.
Go with the plan.
Plan.
And my second question is, James, I don't know if now that we're in graduation season, I seem to remember last year someone went to an aeronautical, right, with an aeronautical post, did that person come out of the CVTE programs? I believe
Yes,
so.
I believe
it was automotive.
auto, yes, exactly. That's my recollection as well.
Okay, yeah, because I was really fascinated by that, and I've sort of been interested in that. It's just the directions that students can go from these programs.
That's right.
Any more questions? It's a wonderful report.
I wanted to know a little bit more about the tie-in with Essex Aggie Tech. You said it's a requirement?
That we consult with them. So because we're in the same area, when we
Yeah.
spent like in terms of work, the workforce we're developing as well as are they and the other schools in their catchment area. So when we're looking to expand a program, it's a requirement that we coordinate with them, that they're informed. We also have great resources.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of know-how there. So we regularly have connections with.
Would there be something that would, prevent us from say expanding in a certain area because of what they're doing?
That would be part of, as long as there's a workforce need, which the areas that the examples I gave are areas in which there's a larger need than being met currently, the nursing, the medical, technical area. That's some preliminary conversations with the state about that without crunching the numbers yet. There's plenty of need there, so it wouldn't prevent us. It could, there is a possibility of there being certain fields that we wouldn't be able to, the state would say no, because there isn't the workforce need there, or that workforce need is covered by, the regional local school, Essex Tech. But that's not any of the places we're looking, but that is possible.
Melissa has a question.
You're muted.
You're muted, Melissa.
Thank you. Sorry, not a question, but more of a clarification. So when we joined Essex Tech years ago with the new school, we are in a contract with them, and part of the contract language is that we cannot compete with their programs, with the exception of the programs that we have already. So if we're going to expand and go and offer a program that Essex Tech has, we have to get the vote of their school committee in addition to working with DESE.
That was
I'm
kind
sure
of
they-
my suspicion. Sorry.
But there is that requirement under our contract with them.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it won't be a problem. And when you're working with Dr. Riccio, she's going to be more than happy to have offerings to other students because their programs are full.
We help them recruit. I'm pretty sure they'll be helpful in helping us and developing the program.
This one.
I didn't know if you had a copy of that agreement on file, just so that you know there's certain language that we have to.
Right,
comply
you know,
with.
we'll track it down. I haven't seen it, but we'll track it down. Thank you, Melissa. That's helpful.
I had this thought, you know, as far as graduates, about perhaps like a special alumni night for just the vocational programs. Do you have anything like that?
You know, that's something we haven't had a night. We have alumni who come back to the school to speak to our students from different programs, including our vocational program in January is a time when but not, you know, something
Yeah, more than
showcase.
like some kind of mixer, you know,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is where I got, you know, just to like, it's a, you know, impart on the kids, like, this is where you could be, this is how far I've gotten. You know, this is what I'm doing with my life.
Certainly great when some of the businesses that come in to recruit our students are, you know, represented by our former students,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And all that, right? That's frequent, right? Including teachers in our program too. But yeah, all of that. That's, I like that idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Good stuff.
The next item of business is O'Malley Innovation Middle School end of year student learning update with Principal Ken Beatty and Maura, I'm blanking on her last name.
Donahue.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me back so soon. I feel like I was just here.
Because you were
You'll run for me the slides. Thanks. You're
much quicker than I think, right?
Very good. So what you're looking at, just to start, is this is one of the exhibitions from our Evening of Excellence. This is a sixth grade math class in which students illustrated their learning for the year. So if you weren't able to make that next year, be sure to be there. I'm going to talk about several pieces from our plan this year. So just to refresh your memory, we've been through these our three focus areas are improving student learning, student engagement, and professional collaboration. And our strengths, you know, still the same categories. We've accomplished some things this year under our strengths with, you know, progress we've made with the literacy review, social emotional support, and implementing our SEL center. With STEM and critical and creative thinking, we have expanded our science center, our PACE program. I'll talk about in a bit, the success we've had with the number of days that students would have been out of school, in which they were in school. As people talked about earlier, our band concerts were phenomenal. The musicals was phenomenal. It's really exciting to have our arts back in place. And then our leadership team is focusing on growth. So first, just quickly, a few points of what we've accomplished and are working on with professional collaboration. Primarily, I want to highlight the work of the Literacy Review Committee that Maura did a spectacular job facilitating. We are going to be ready to go to pilot products in the fall with an implementation in the spring. So a lot of work was done this year around that. And then the second highlight on this slide is the continuation of our PLC process with student success plans in our every 6 days, there's a meeting among the house teachers. So this year we were able to implement 42 plans, 19 of which, almost half of them, were complete, closed up in 4 to 6 weeks with success. And the remainder, most are ongoing. There were some glitches around mental health issues coming in, and some different things came up that we'll have to figure out how to address and deal with, not necessarily things we have control of over at school as well. But that's a pretty good ratio for our first real work with success plans for kids. With regard to student engagement, one of our focus areas, the one I want to focus on mostly here are two things. Community meetings by house, during which advisory groups just decided on many different service learning projects. And many of you remember the day of service that we used to have in the fall, where everybody went out raking leaves, even though we didn't really have enough houses to rake. This year, people did a variety of things like make chew toys for dogs, which are pictured. And do book drives, send letters to folks around town, gather food, and do all kinds of different kinds of projects with by advisory. Kids decided what their projects were going to be, and we'll be expanding that again next year. Also with regard to student engagement on that one, the PACE program. So this year, a total of 53 students were in school for 69 days. So that's 69 days of learning that were not lost by kids who had some sort of egregious conduct incident that caused a suspension, but we were able to keep them in and learning instead of at home on the couch playing video games. So that's definitely a success for us. We did run for the second year a 3-part student climate survey. So students are asked a series of questions. I want to say there's 40 odd questions on the survey in different categories: self-awareness, social awareness, self-regulation, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, student engagement, adult respect, student respect, adult support, and safety. So it's a little bit similar to the survey that they take at the end of MCAS at 8th grade, but ours is broader. So there's a couple of highlights that I think we should be proud of. This one, there's at least one trusted adult in the building who I can talk to. 82% of our students have that. We want it to be 100%, but that's a good starting point for us. I feel safe while at school, 81%. Again, we'd like that higher. The survey, by the way, was administered right after the Friday of the week of the Texas shooting. So although the numbers were, pretty steady across the year, I'm sure I'm wondering what the reflection would be if that hadn't been the case on that Friday. On this next slide, of course, the O'Malley Academy shines, the third question. There are lots of chances for kids to do things after school. 89% of the kids find a lot of that. 2 places where we have work to do. We've already started talking and thinking about getting kids more engaged. That's where most of what I learn is interesting, and my teachers connect what I'm doing to the outside classroom. In data teams today, there were a lot of conversations about, and actually each of the math data meetings started with an exploration that was an estimation activity that got everybody thinking, and the conversations revolved around how do we get kids hooked. The Ignite strategy from Zaretta Hammond, getting them right involved with doing something and getting their thinking going and being creative about it. So that's on our desk to focus on in the future next year. And then this last piece, this is where we have our greatest concerns. We have some work to do. The rules and school-wide expectations for behavior are very clear, is only 77%. It should be higher, although still in the green in terms of the way we look at percentages on these kinds of surveys. But the students respecting one another only being at 60% this spring, and students think it's important to follow rules being 45%. I think that's reflective this year in particular of the challenges that many schools have faced around conduct issues. And it's certainly a focus that we've got right in our radar. The next portion of the presentation, I'm going to turn over to Maura. She's going to talk through the data that we've collected around particularly reading and math and learning.
The slides we're going to share with you are very similar to the slides that.
Can I ask a question before you move on to that? Just a quick question. Are these survey results shared with all the teachers and staff?
The spring has not been yet, but they will be, yeah.
So we continue our work on the curriculum review, particularly in the area of literacy, and I'll highlight some things in the coming slides that are starting to indicate the movements that we're seeing around literacy. Our objectives throughout the curriculum review have been to really look at scope and sequence, to look at materials and resources and tools that we're using to look at teaching strategies, not just in ELA classes, but in literacy across all content areas. And we are at the point we're meeting on Monday to make final arrangements for what our next steps are going to be for piloting in the fall. So we're very excited about that. We did some work with Keys to Literacy over the course of the school year, which you may recall. We had a focus on 2-column notes. It's been really interesting as the teachers across every content area have been incorporating 2-column note-taking into their instruction. Students are anecdotally sharing with teachers and with their classmates how for a lot of kids, the strategy is connecting with them and helping them organize information in a manner that is much more succinct and clear for them. A few of them, even on the Evening of Excellence, chose that as their topic that they wanted to share with incoming students and with guests. So that was exciting to see the impact that that small step has made. For data teams, we started that in the fall and have been continuing on really creating and refining the process of looking at student data from a number of different perspectives, from the standards alignment and scope and sequence. What standards are we really successful with? What standards do we need to move around because we're not hitting at the appropriate time? And what standards do we continue to need more work in? What are the steps we need to do to make those changes? And also, how does that line up with the tools and resources that we are using? You know, going back again to literacy review and the upcoming math review. So our student growth data, we're going to start with ELA. And like I said, these are the slides that you had seen a few months ago, but we've just added in the spring data. So we'll start with 6th grade ELA.
That's right.
So what we're seeing is fluctuation. Our students in the not meeting category, they came in at about 13%. There was a dip in the winter, they're back up to 13%. But the important thing to note with all of this is that the bar keeps getting higher every time they take it. So the bar for not meeting or partially meeting or meeting expectations was at one point in the fall, then it was at a different point in the winter, and it's at the highest peak now. So they're continuing to moving and hopefully remain on par, if not further from that bar. So that's our 6th grade ELA data. And the next slide is a longitudinal look at it. So you can see with the blue bars where the children left at the end of last year. So we're looking to see what has that change been over with the cohort all the way from the end of their previous school year to the end of this current school year.
Right, just one.
Sure,
So spring, so that was when they were in 5th grade?
The blue is when they were in 5th grade.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you compiled the data from all the schools?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And we can continue that process now because we can track this cohort over the course of several years to see what what steps we're taking, what's working and not working, and make adjustments in real time. So our 7th grade data, you see some plateaus there. We don't see quite the dips and rises that we saw before, but statistically it's all very close. And again, with that bar continuing to rise, that's what you hope to see, if not greater gains. So it's good that we're not losing ground there. This is a longitudinal look at our 7th graders. At the end of 6th grade, you can see a point to highlight here is when they left 6th grade, there was 26% scoring in that not meeting category. It dropped down in the fall to 14, and we've been able to keep kids out of that band throughout the course of the school year. And you can see the rises on the other end. Yes.
Quick question, Mara. Snapshot, if you can, for me. You said the bar continually moves. Like, how does that skew the results at all? Or am I missing something?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't skew the results. It frames how we look at it. So similar to MCAS over the course of several years, there's certain cut points for each category. The cut points change. So let's say that you scored in the 60th percentile. Nationally, you scored higher than 60% of all other 7th grade students who took this assessment. Back in the fall, that 60% might have had you meeting or exceeding, falling into that category. But in the spring, you're only that same 60%, you're only falling into the partially meeting. So the bar keeps rising of what you have to attain to move over to those meeting and exceeding categories.
And the notion is that because you should have gained more fluency or more knowledge or more, and I'll try this analogy. It may or may not work. We'll see. As when your kids are young and they're being measured against, size or length or height, okay, like that, where there should be in terms of a normal range, continues to change because they are growing older and getting bigger. So in this case, because you're further along in the school year, what partially meeting is higher where partially meeting was earlier in school. Is that helping?
Yes.
I think of it as if it were completely flat from fall to spring, the test gets harder through the year. So that means if I'm flat, that means I'm growing perfectly appropriate along with the grade level. So we want our kids to grow more than that because we want more at a higher level, but they're growing progressively with the grade level.
Definitely, we definitely want to be aiming to get more and more kids to meetings.
Yep.
That's the goal. Yep. And so,
And this, and you're gonna keep going with the data, so I don't wanna slow you down, but just from what we've seen with 6th and 7th, so so less than 50% in all grades are meeting our targets.
Mhm.
And then lumped in this, say, what we're looking at now, we've got 41% this spring meeting and exceeding. So in that 41% are the kids who are sort of solid, and then there's the kids who are, you know, exceeding that, and they're together in there, and there's differentiation happening for them, or, okay.
And there's also attention on the, you know, we go down to the student level with all of this and how we're looking at it when there's fluctuation, you know, particularly in the partially meeting category. Well, where did those kids go? How many of the kids that moved out of the partially meeting moved into the meeting or exceeding, and what was that gain? Or if they fell back, what was the, you know, decrease, if there is one, that caused them to land in another band. So we're looking at the all the way down to the student level.
And now just this summer, I'm also looking at, like, it looks like there's a drop off, which I think is expected, right? In some summer, you know, from spring to fall. But it looks like the partially meeting kids here in this one didn't. And I'd be curious to know if these were kids who were tapped for summer school, you know, for programs that help with that. So that's
Yeah, excellent question.
wondering.
And it certainly informs what our effective strategies over the summer are.
Right, right.
Our 8th grade ELA data for the course of the year, you can see that the students came in the fall, 15% not meeting, 48% partially meeting, 37% meeting. And then you can see the adjustments over the course of the school year, and pretty consistent growth between winter and spring. Again, we want to continue to close that gap. So we're looking for ambitious growth, not just regular expected growth, but this certainly informs our instruction. And this screen just is another illustration of this cohort of students and where they left off in 7th grade. Let's see, on the MCAS, the high needs population was really an area that was targeted for us in the past. So we're also working to disaggregate this data and pull out exactly where our students that fall into a high needs category for a variety of reasons, and what that distribution looks like as well. And that's what you'll see on the next slide. We've seen, this is similar to a slide that we showed you in the winter. There are adjustments. We've seen growth in each category, modest growth, but we're seeing that growth in all of the categories, moving closer and closer to meeting and exceeding. For math, we have fluctuations, which we are to be expected because we're really concentrated on literacy this year, but the same trajectory. You can see the students meeting and exceeding came in at 40% in the fall, and it's elevated to 43%. We want to continue to see that rise. This is a longitudinal information for those students, 41% leaving 5th grade last year at meeting or exceeding, and now 43 for where we stand right now. Our 7th grade math, you see a fluctuation, consistently maintaining in the not meeting category, and then some variations in the partially meeting and the meeting and exceeding for math. and what it looked like for our students when they left sixth grade. So they came in at 35%, or they left sixth grade at 35% meeting or exceeding, and then you can see the dip and then the rise in the dip again within that category. And our eighth grade, very similar. Where, you know, one of the things that we have done throughout our data meetings and looking at this is looking at patterns, and we can definitely see the roller coaster pattern across the fall, winter, and spring testing. And you know, how much of that is test fatigue with them taking these assessments, you know, right off of their multiple days of MCAS testing. So we're looking at testing windows and how can we move that around to make sure that we're maximizing student performance and making sure that we're getting the most accurate reflection of their abilities. And this is longitudinally, you can see with our eighth graders coming in at leaving seventh grade at 32% meeting and exceeding, and leaving eighth grade at 39. One of the things, especially when you're embarking on this process, it's change process and really trying to follow the data and see what it tells us, is we're looking at it in those snapshots from a very high level. And when you're looking at the change process, you start to see baby steps first. So did we see any baby steps in here that are really good indication that we're on the right path? And I think our growth data in literacy really speaks to that. So what we have here is a chart this is the growth data for all students K to 8 for the school year. So in the ELA, for our growth data for the 6th through 8th graders, we scored in the 57th percentile was the median growth data, which is great. And while we're not seeing necessarily the shift between bands that we were hoping to see, what we're looking for is, are they moving? And across the district, we're seeing that they're made significant gains in that area of growth. Math is the area where we're falling behind our counterparts at the elementary level in the math growth. But again, that's where we're leaving in that effort in the fall with our math curriculum review.
Just a question on that graph, just so I understand.
Sure.
The previous one. So student growth percentiles, so as a percentile, I'm assuming it's based on 100.
Yes, it's a median based on 100.
Okay, so this is the growth from where they were to where they are, not on a, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So just to dovetail into that, so the blue column, is it the same students?
No, that's our current elementary students.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
Because we're looking to see what are the trends across the district, and when we're trying to measure our growth and where we're successful and where we're keeping par across the district, or if we're not keeping par across the district, we want to look at the totality of growth. So we really, we find that elementary information very useful to us in helping us in our trends.
What you're aiming for on the growth percentile is 60 or above. That's considered high or faster growth. Okay, so you see we're on sort of verge of that in a couple of these. So a 6-8 ELA and K-5 math, right? But that's just so you know that's where you're aiming, 60 or above on that to see a growth. That's really where kids are growing at a rate faster than their peers, so to speak, at a significant rate faster than their peers. Because what they're doing here, I think this is right, and Greg or Maura, correct me, is that this is a comparison to other kids at other places doing STAR.
This is national.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my, I didn't want to sound like a dummy, but.
No, not at all.
My next question
Different
was,
assessments work differently, so that's a good question.
who
And-
are we comparing ourselves to here?
Anything from 50 and above is positive growth relative to their national peers. So we're not looking for 100% on something like this. That's not,
Okay, that's.
we're not talking about mastery, we're not talking about scaled scores, we're simply saying of all the students, in all the districts that use Star 360, where do our students fall relative to, that median?
Yep.
And anything above 50 is in the good, and anything above 60 is considered very strong. And you will rarely see, 70, 80, 90, something like that. That would be extraordinary.
So what we're
That
not
often happens if a student has been, a student or students or group of students have been doing very, very poorly for whatever reason. Right. And then they have, then they can grow with accelerated with the right support really fast. Right. And that's the group of students you'll see who are 70 or plus. That makes sense. Yeah.
So while we're, this is the indication that we're moving in the right direction and we'll see those bands changing over time, which is, the bigger picture of what we're looking for. And then this is just a snapshot again of our high needs students and the adjustments in winter and the categories that they're falling into and indicating, where with our high needs students do we need to concentrate our efforts and analyze how best to support them.
You're grouping students with disabilities with economically disadvantaged. What's the purpose of that?
Those are MCAS categories. So our high needs categories are students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and English language learners. So our English language learners in these statistics, the percentages were too low to be statistically significant.
You mean numbers of
And these are,
students?
what's that?
You mean numbers of students?
Numbers of students and who participated, yeah. And in our past performance, in the 2019 MCAS that we were comparing to, our English language learners were not considered, they did well as compared to these two categories, these two demographics. So not lumped together as much as these are the high needs categories.
But that's high needs students is the umbrella, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the umbrella term for those three categories.
Yeah, the state considers a student to be high needs if they fall under any one or more of those three categories.
So when you look at Gloucester's data, like if you go to the state and you look at our data, it's in these categories. Like that's just a state.
It's the way the MCAS cookie crumbles, I guess.
No, it's basically,
It's the same.
ultimately, when, this is not, a lot of things that shifted over the last 25 years, right, or 30 years, is in not only in education, but in many other fields, is just a better understanding of not only data, but how to use data. And so basic disaggregation is, if we're just looking at the whole, meaning all students, and don't look at that, of course, then it is likely or possible you are hiding deficiencies. Okay, and so you disaggregate by grade, you disaggregate by boys or girls, you disaggregate by your race or class, you disaggregate by in this case subgroups, high needs or special education. And that's in order for us to learn and have a closer understanding of who may be doing really well with 8th graders, but not that well with 7th graders. Okay, we may be doing really well with high needs students, but not that well with English language learners. And unless you disaggregate, you will be masking places that are of strength, and also places of particular strength, and places that may be particularly deficient. Yeah, it's just a basic approach in any sort of data analysis to understand, have a deeper understanding of how you're doing anything. That could be sales, that could be, in terms of regions, or sectors, that could be,
So this is just, again, we've shown this before, this is our plan, and we're gonna continue with it. Next year, it's literacy and math. Again, focusing on the tier 1, adding the math intervention and to accompany the literacy intervention, and then expanding, scaling so that we can continue the modest growth that we've started to make and expand that. And these are the places that we're going to improve everything. We've again gone through this before. I don't want to be redundant, but we're continuing to push along with our curriculum reviews, our professional development focus on understanding universal design for learning and our literacy, bringing math in, continuing with the assessments. Today's conversation at the data teams was a little bit about our report card grades to see how we can make them a better measurement of what students are actually learning. So perhaps it's an assessment grade and a practice grade, so we can delineate between when kids are getting the handle of things and getting their work done and their effort versus what do they actually learn. So that's a helpful data point to us, along with STAR and along with some other pieces.
Laura, go ahead.
So one thing that sort of interested me, how many days of testing do they have?
It depends. So MCAS is 2 days per subject. When 8th grade has science in addition to English, to math. The STAR testing takes a day for math and a day for English, 3 times a year. And then English has an additional day for a writing benchmark.
That's 13, I said, just 13
Is
for
that your
each
total?
grade. Correct, 13 for each grade.
13 days.
But are they full days or?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, no.
So
No,
it's
So
meaning
13.
13
so-
times.
It's a single block. So in their English class today, you're gonna have a test. In your other classes, we've got regular instruction.
But is MCAS full day?
Well, MCAS it runs the gamut from a couple of hours to, it's very student dependent. Right.
Yeah, anywhere from 45 minutes to.
So it'd be better to say 13 sessions. So to
Yeah,
speak,
sessions,
or-
yes.
Because it can be more than a class period, and MCAS can be more than a class period, but STAR is a
So yeah,
class.
the other assessments are just a separate class period.
And that's the most because of 8th grade is science. You're taking just an MCAS day off for 5th or 6th and 7th? Because they don't have science. You're
They don't
taking-
have- Yeah, the only grade that tests in science is 8th,
So take off 2 sessions for 7.
and 2 7, yeah, and for 6th, yeah.
So, because you said, we don't know if it's testing fatigue, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of testing. Which I know MCAS are, I'm not offering a solution really.
That's the one I'd get rid of.
Right, no, I know, but as a parent, I saw the sort of elementary lead up to MCAS. And I can't imagine, what's different in middle school, but I have an idea. So I just thought that was an interesting data point, that these kids are being tested and tested and tested. And I don't know if it's more difficult or more stressful for kids who are struggling more, but I think it could be. So I just wonder if there's anything to do about that.
I think I'm hearing it differently than you are, Laura. I'm not hearing they're testing and testing and testing. I'm hearing there are sessions.
13 days that have a session is still a day when you have a session that you have a big test. So I'm just asking, because you said there could be some fatigue.
I don't consider the fatigue to be related to stress as much as they don't care anymore how they do on the test.
I
Because
see.
they're tired of that particular activity.
I see.
And Maura, were you saying that specifically because they just done MCAS and shortly after MCAS, they were doing STAR?
Yes.
Is that what you're, when you?
So we're looking at everything. We're looking at how, when we see a student that has a significant discrepancy in their performance in the winter and their performance in the spring, or what the teacher is seeing in class and what the teacher, the report that one of the first things we're doing is looking at, well, how long did they take on this? Because if we're looking in, you took 4 minutes on this, we know that that's not an accurate representation.
Right.
We might not be able to do much about it in the moment, but we want to factor everything in, because at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that we're giving you everything you need to be successful. And if we have to revamp our assessment strategy in some way to help with that, we want to look at how, every possible consideration.
That makes sense. I'm just sort of processing it.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up just a little bit, from all the presentations we've had on MCAS over the years. One of the examples of how to improve was, are we pacing our lessons correctly? Are we are they being tested on things we haven't got to? And this may be another factor that may come up. So it's all information that helps improve either where we put instruction or how we do instruction when we do the assessments, so that so
Well, it's one
It's a
of
lot
the-
of information
Yeah,
that
one
can
of the
be
pieces of
beneficial.
data that we get from STAR that we don't get the same way from MCAS is what is it that they struggled with on this assessment? So there's a report for every kid that tells you which standards they had trouble with, so we can look at it. And we get a report on all of their performance, not the individual questions per se, but the information on each of the standards they were tested on, so that we can look at it and say, did we teach that in November and never go back to it? Or, or did the students spend 14 minutes or, much less time than they should? And see what we can do to change that up, because the information we get from is really valuable for that student and for students overall.
And you get it more quickly too. right?
It's immediate.
Right.
And it also tells us what's going well. Our students, when we drill down to those standards, their vocabulary development standards over the course of the year have grown exponentially. And that's great news. And so we were able to have conversations about what does that look like? And how is the instruction taking place that's influencing that? And how do we replicate that in other areas? So it gives us, it gleans a lot of information for us. There are definitely benefits to it.
Yeah.
Just have a question?
No, I mean, I guess when I look at this data, it's hard for me not to think about sort of where they are developmentally, and I sort of think about 6th and 7th grade being sort of fraught with lots of challenges, and there being a big difference in maturity and resiliency between 6th and 8th grade. And sort of, I noticed that there was some more consistency in the 8th grade data than the 6th and 7th grade data. And so I just sort of am wondering, I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but do you sort of, is there room for that in your analysis? Just thinking about sort of what kids are going through socially and emotionally in 6th and 7th grade and in 8th grade, but it seems like there's a jump in maturity and resiliency.
In this particular set of data, yes, that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah.
But yes, everything comes into play. Why is it with this particular group of kids that they were able to maintain? Or what is it that we did in instruction, or how the classes were structured? And there are always questions those are the conversations that happen to try and figure out what it is that caused either the positives or the negatives in the demonstration of learning.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up, if I can, I want to say something out loud that perhaps some folks are thinking, and I know that Warren and Lynn are, is two things that really need to go together. And Tim Darwin's a part of it, which is these aren't good enough results. Below 50% of kids meeting expectations is not good enough. And we know that, and I think you know that. And at the same time, the work that this team has gotten going this year is the right work to impact that in an important way over time, and we have to. And we'll continue to work together, as a team, continue to work with the staff and teachers on mailing, both to understand, where these kids, where middle school kids are developmentally, because it's so important. I've been a middle school teacher. I mean, they are lovable, fun kids, and at a different level of maturity. That literally is in the middle, elementary, and high school, right? Which makes a lot of fun. But it also means that we have to know these kids well and do the instructional work, the review of ELA and that, the instructional focus you talk about, the training and support teachers, the data analysis that you describe it and really do it. I think that's the first time folks that have come to you in a long time talking about really doing those things. And the teachers are doing it, and they're getting the hang of it, and they're seeing an impact on it. And so both those things are really important. But the primary one is we need to do better.
I think the only information we had historically was MCAS. And that's, not actionable. It's way after the fact. It's comparing to the state. It's not really dissecting how the child is moving through their school year and the skills they're acquiring or not acquiring. So I'm pleased to see the similar presentations as we've been getting for elementary, which have really made a big difference in the way kids are learning.
I mean, I think that was the last word.
No, it wasn't last word.
Was it the last word? It was.
It wasn't the last word.
He doesn't care that. I know, but it was a nice frame. Just thinking about the conduct data or the survey. And I know, again, you're the professionals, but I've been reading so much about how this 2-year or 3-year period has impacted especially middle school students, especially that age group. I mean, as you said, this is happening all over the country. Are there, I can only imagine that impacts all of this, right? Because that's their social emotional health and everything they're experiencing in this moment of great tumult. I'm assuming that there's like sort of national, statewide or national sort of people looking at how to rebuild for these students, who are struggling in these ways, and the conduct is part of it. And I know that we put a lot into the social emotional piece this year and moving forward. I guess it's sort of a question and comment. How do you see that, the adjusting, hopefully, out of this really intense period at school? How do you see that as playing a role in sort of improving what we're doing?
Oh, I think it's essential that we have to get a handle on that. The kids have to get a handle on figuring out how to do school again. I don't have a good answer to that. I haven't never found anyone yet that has one. I think we all knew there was going to be impact, and I don't think anyone will continuing to see more and more as time goes on how grave that impact is.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to paint a dismal picture, but it's going to be every day thinking about where are we, what can we try, what can we do differently, how do we engage the kids more? And I think all of us who work with kids think that if kids aren't engaged, of course, that all these other things are not going to happen. So what do we do better? That's our focus has to be on community, on connection, on relationship, on giving the kids a voice, on the adult conversations that we're having where the adults are trying to figure out what it is they can change up to have kids be more invested again, like they used to at the level they might have been before pandemic, to get them really involved in their learning. Some of today's conversations at data teams are about the fact that they don't necessarily understand the value of it. Why do we ask you to do it? We just took 2 days of MCAS with 2 sessions, and now 2 days later we're doing another test. It doesn't feel necessary to them because it's they're not the ones doing the analysis. So how do we get them involved in that? Having conversations about their data, all of those kinds of things to connect them to it.
Right. It's too big a question to answer, I know that.
Oh, no, it's, if I had one, I'd make a lot of money.
Yes.
That's it.
Just a quick comment. First of all, I appreciate you attending the meetings, and you always bring, probably a little bit different in that you bring a lot of data, you bring a lot of verbiage to the meetings and your slides and stuff. All day data driven, and I'm probably more of a, let's try plan B or something, just you're much more thorough than I am. And I think you have a very difficult job. I did write down 2 things that I think, and Laura just touched on it, is the discipline or the respect thing and the following the rules things. I looked at those as kind of just red lights. I was like, wow, that's a low percentage of kids that put value on that. And then the other thing I wrote is, one of the questions I think was, what's most of what I learned is interesting, and something along those lines. I think, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, that's interesting to me in that what I've seen at the elementary level is the kids became more engaged, the more interested they were in what they were learning. It kind of triggered, hey, I'm kind of into this now, and then I back into, well, we're going to try some pilot type programs, and I'm like, maybe that, maybe it all comes together. We throw the ball and mix it up, and it comes together. But very concerned about just the respect thing, respect for each other, respect for teachers, and the following the rules type things.
Yeah. And I think that's newer since pandemic. It's almost like the time out of school caused kids to forget that they're part of a community in school, and we haven't rebuilt that yet. So those 2 questions are alarming. and they're important for us to work with kids on. So it's conversations with kids to say, you know, what changes this? And I've had some of those, just to think about the kinds of things that help them feel like they want to do what's going on in class. So.
Just to that, you know, those are conversations that we need to have around respect, right? Like that is like a community-wide conversation that needs to be had, right? We just as a culture have lost some sense of respect and decency, just in terms of, especially during the pandemic. So I think we have these interesting sort of expectations for our students, but we don't have the same expectations for the adults in the room.
Yeah, and the kids are certainly reflecting the tone.
Absolutely, they see it, they hear it, they feel it. And I think we really need to remember that, you know, respect in general is something that we have to get back to in the way that we interact with each other. And it doesn't surprise me at all, right? That data, it was like a huge red flag for you, and I was like, yeah, it makes total sense. Like,
It makes sense, but it's
yeah,
still alarming.
it's concerning,
Alarming.
but it makes total sense to me that like this is trickling down to our students, and it's causing significant disrepair in our schools, for sure. So
I respect you and the work you do. Outstanding work, much appreciated.
Keep at it.
Yeah, I have questions about the questionnaire as well. It's not a questionnaire. You know, it wasn't really clear to me whether when they were asked these questions, are they answering on behalf of themselves or reflecting on what they feel the student body is, say, respecting the rules? Like, is that, like, I don't know, I'd like to see the questionnaire because I don't know how they were
Yeah.
posed.
There's some of each. So there are some questions where students at this school,
Yeah,
et cetera, and then there are other I questions.
right.
So,
Okay, and similar concerns to both my counterparts here about the degradation of respect among peers and teachers and the rules. I mean, pandemic is like an easy answer to why that's become more of a problem, but you know, you have to put it in combination, I think, with social media. I think it's just too easy to be disrespectful online, and that seems to be permeating into you know, culture amongst each other. And I think pandemic made it all the worse, and it could be. I think it started a long time ago, and just exasperated. If I pronounced that right. But yeah, it's concerning. Just wanted to remark on that, and I'm curious about the questionnaire itself. What is, I asked myself this question, I don't understand what it means to be asked, the term social awareness, what is
the
that?
category of social awareness is for kids, it's about, you know, their relationship standing, so how they relate to other kids, how other kids relate to them. So those are the kinds of questions that fall under that category.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Very
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn, very much.
Thanks for your work.
Continue with the next.
Second on the agenda is update of attendance and catchment areas.
You have in your packet a memo from me
Yes.
describing at length. Just summary, I should say. So just sort of stepping back for a second, your school committee policy JC is about school catchment areas. So these are the areas defined around the city that determine where students go to elementary school. Having one middle school, one high school, we don't have, they're citywide, obviously. And in that school committee policy, you call for updating superintendent's catchment areas at certain times. And listed here, obvious, the most important one here being number 3, the opening of the school. but also overcrowded condition in existing school. You could say that, compared to others, West Heritage has some of this, okay? So we'll talk about a little bit about that, but really the most significant in driving is the consolidation of these Peace Gloucester veterans, okay? And also the need to make sure that school is fully utilized, like all schools to be fully utilized. So the process underway, which at this point is information gathering and really information gathering, and then we'll continue as the summer goes on to look at versions of the update that we're doing. It's very important that this is an update. It's not a whole-scale revision of any way, shape, or form of the catchment areas. So it's really going to be around the fringes, and I'll just show that in a moment, just sort of the basic concept. So we're going to use various forms of information. So obviously the current enrollment by school attendance and catchment areas. Currently, we're looking at that already, and share that with you and the community as we go along. Current enrollment at each school and also by grade level, to see where we have some pinch points or where we don't. City census data for ages 0 to 5, so what we can expect, just in terms of who was born in Gloucester between 0 and 5 years ago. That's good data, not great data, because of course people have children and move away. If families, move in, others move in, that sort of thing. But it does give us some indication of things. And then another piece is earlier there have been proposed zoning changes in front of the city council. Not many of those have been passed as it has played out. In talking to the planning department, they've explained to me that they don't anticipate any big shifts because of those. In other places I've worked, they've had large, like 40B or large housing complexes being built that were mixed use, mixed size, mixed bedrooms, and all sorts of things. Gloucester would have that anything in the works at this point. If we did, we would look at it. If we had another Halyard, we'd be looking at that closely, but we don't at this point. And any zone changes that have been adopted recently, which are very minimal, we don't expect that to generate mass numbers. Okay? The last piece actually is on the slide, but we also look at previous enrollment projections. Those are a few years old, but we definitely did one, I think, did one for the building project as part of the state process. We'll look at that too. We have criteria for updating school catchment areas, and happy to get input on this or conversation or feedback on this. We want to maximize enrollment in the new school building. Okay. Target relief to any schools in relation to space and school and class size. Another reason for updating the catchment areas is to maintain class size guidelines that the school committee has put forth. Always want to do our best to avoid creating socioeconomic disproportionality in school assignments. So you'll never be able to, in really almost any community, without gerrymandering districts in a really funky way, to have balance. That could in any sort of across many indicators. Okay, specific is for socioeconomic disproportionality here, and the reason that we don't want to get that too out of whack is because there's just on many levels, I would say this in a way that makes sense. Many more challenges for those families who are lower on the socioeconomic levels in just living life, honestly, and that includes education as well. So higher needs, typically not always. We want to make sure there's no real range of differences between schools. So we'll try to balance that as best we can. Again, this goes back to gerrymander. Try not to have just school catchment areas that are bizarrely shaped or extend too far. We have some challenge on that because we have Plum Cove, which is very far north, right? North, right?
Yes.
Confused in my geography, circling Gloucester and water everywhere, so it throws me off. But anyway, so there's also considering walkability and transportation, and busing, that sort of thing. And how do you, not having buses, go over very large swaths of land and traveling sort of stuff. The most important, so the top 3 or 4 are the most important ones here. These are other ones we'll consider. Another very important one is second from the bottom there. It's the idea of minimizing the impact on change of current students or families. And the notion there is, we don't anticipate telling people, you have, who have a third grader, in fourth grade, your child's going to a different school, okay? We don't anticipate that happening, okay? We don't intend to make that happen. And the way we avoid that is grandfather, okay? So what that means though is over time, the enrollment gets to where we want it to be when we're making the adjustments, okay? Not a perfect science. Another thing we could consider, but it may develop sort of down the road, really is many schools use buffer zones. Meaning you have a zone, a catchment area that is for a specific school. But where it borders another school's catchment area, you might have a buffer zone where the students who live in that buffer zone may be assigned to either school. Okay? And that gives you flexibility if you're having large enrollment or growth enrollment to sort of balance that necessary. So one school doesn't happen to get way out of whack and be quite crowded, and oh, it's not. I don't think we need to develop those right now. It could be something in the future, because we're not really, we have good enrollment here, solid enrollment. It's steady, if not growing a little bit, but we don't have sort of rapid growth right now. Just to show you what I mean, this is on the left are all the catchment zones of K to 5. You'll see a couple things. One, obviously green. So you see the colors green is West Parish. West Parish is covering a lot more territory, because as we all know, there's just the housing is just further afield, okay? As opposed to if you look at Vets being a very small area. West Parish is also a bigger school, whereas the original the Vets zone is a smaller school, but that a denser area of the city, so it's obviously smaller. The other thing you'll notice is that the light yellow, which is Plum Cove, is separated by a chunk around Beaman, which is purple, okay? And you also see, the Beaman purple goes down, deep into the downtown around Centennial, So that is just the nature of having a school, Plum Cove, which doesn't have very many people living around it, very many students at this point, okay? And obviously the density of the city is closer to that downtown, right? And I think when this was originally created, not wanting to have Beaman not in its school zone. Not having the school in a Plum Cove, catchment area. That just doesn't make sense, right? Kids would be walking past the school to get on a bus to go to another school. So that's why you see the way it's constructed. What's likely to happen, and this is pretty obvious, is we'll make someone on the right is a zoom in of the downtown area. And I think Centennial's here, that sort of thing, just to orient people. The cut bridge is right about here. Okay, there'll be adjustments down here. Okay, we're not there just to know where, but that's likely where their adjustments are to happen in some way, shape, or form. And again, not to move people from one to the next. We'll give folks that option. If they want to go to school that's close to where they are, or is brand new, that's people can do that if they're in the catchment area. But that's where we'll make the adjustments. And what we tend to do is to bring to you in one of your August meetings, sort of the first draft. That's what you'll have to understand, and sort of just the public being aware of it, get input and suggestions and guidance, and then early in September make the final decision. We want to have both the naming of the school and the catchment areas set in the beginning of October, so people have that for the rest of the year. Question, anything I can add to that?
Don't have anything important to say. You start.
I just have a question. How are we going to communicate all of this to families?
Loudly, often, and respectfully. I don't know yet, but do you mean like the process, what's happening, or after the fact?
I mean, before your time here.
Yeah.
The only way to find out your school, if you lived downtown, was to call Kathy Verga, who used to run the buses. The school system was not the source. The administration was not the source of that information.
So when since registered, that was one source. No, do you mean like when folks maybe moved in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to
So like
understand.
people will say to me like, how do I find out
Right.
which school I'm zoned for? And I don't have an answer.
Right.
So what we'll have on our website is a very clear listing.
Yes.
Not only by, because obviously it's a Washington Street, very long street, right?
Yeah.
And it's sometimes broken, I mean, at some point it's broken down by address, right? So
Right.
we'll have that sort of thing, yeah. It needs to be, I've seen sort of lookup databases.
Yeah.
Which are actually quite confusing. I mean, they're a good tool in many ways, but they're also, confusing but I think a pretty straightforward listing is probably the best way to go, or something you can search. Yeah.
That'll be a significant, that didn't exist, especially for downtown. It doesn't exist really for downtown, especially for those areas that are sort of cut up.
The listing, what doesn't, I'm sorry, what didn't exist?
Like that easily accessible information on your district.
Yeah.
Like what is your assigned district is not.
Yeah, and we'll also have a map, and so, I mean, I tend to have a couple of ways people can
Yeah.
find that pretty well.
Great.
And then make sure realtors know where to find it, everybody can find it.
What did you say?
You make sure realtors can find it.
Oh, yeah, well, that was actually my next comment, is that realtors will often say the wrong district.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good to have that conversation.
All right, we'll do that once we do the update and make sure we're.
I just want to say, I met somebody at work and they were talking about Beam and from home and how he worked with somebody. He has to drive past his friend's house where their student goes to Beam to get to his kid's school. And that explains everything. I just want to thank you for for me, it was like, oh, I see how that happened. Because I couldn't understand it. Like, I don't get it. Okay, but now I get it.
Yeah. And just so you know, we'll never share this publicly, but we have every student and family mapped, on, across the city. We don't share that publicly, obviously, because you can identify where students live, right? And what grade they're in. Like, we would never share that in years. But it's a tool we're using to understand how to, what the impact is of making changes. Okay. And so you can see just, the different densities of where students are coming from when you look at that. It's just so clear. So it's, but again, we wouldn't share that, but it's very obvious why you have that. It's a Jericho. All right, ready to move on?
Yeah, next order of business is superintendent's report.
So school safety and security update. So I want to give folks an update. I think we gave you an update in the fall, it's when you're doing some safety drills. And those, and so I just want to go through a couple of slides and areas. Obviously, always of importance to families and our staff. It's something that's on our mind. We may not talk a lot about a lot of it, but it's always on our mind. I can guarantee that, and there's almost always work being done. So probably the first and most important area on safety and security is knowing our students and families well. And this is often, I like to highlight it because it's really it's our first line of safety and security. And what I think is great about Gloucester is that a lot of our staff know our families and have known our families and are neighbors of our families in our schools, which is great. But a piece of that is we have lots of levels of staff, clinical staff, so adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, psychologists, teachers, and our paraprofessionals, our principals, assistant principals, and other school administrators, and our school. And I'll mention. So those, I'll start with those. And a major part of their job is knowing our students well. What's going well for them? What's difficult for them? What they're struggling with. Okay, and that's important on two levels. We can identify kids who might be in distress for any number of reasons. Okay. We can support them and work with our families. But also, because of those relationships that are really important to us, we actively work on. When kids see something, they tell us almost, I won't say all the time, but so many times. A level of concern a student might have because something they saw on social media, they will tell a teacher, they will tell a guidance counselor, okay? Something happened to a student or is happening to a student, they tell us, okay? They tell a staff member, they tell an adult, okay, who we know well, who knows them well. That's just crucial in all of this in terms of helping our students, for our students, but also knowing where risks or threats might be, okay? And that's not only student learning about things that are happening inside our schools, that may be students telling us about things that are happening outside of school. with our students or with others, okay? The other piece here is school resource officers. You've heard me talk about this quite a bit, but I'm just really, we work, our school resource officers, so this is, I mean, the specific people, Officer Michael Scola and Officer Peter Terra, who are our primary school resource officers, work very, very well with us and our kids and our families. They know them well, they've been in the community for a long time, they grew up here. And so they're also a resource, and kids go to them, just like they might go to a teacher or guidance counselor and tell them, talk to them, use them as a resource. So they're very valuable in knowing this. And then, of course, they have access to, any specific situations or that are necessary, have the whole police force behind them. So, which allows me to go to the next one, which is our preparedness. So a big piece of our preparedness happens every year in the summertime, our annual meeting with police and fire leadership. So just last summer, we were in here with one of the lieutenants who handles emergency response with our leader team, talking about drills and preparation and training. We also have a summer meeting with myself and some of our district leaders, as well as the police and fire chief and some of their leaders as well. And a lot of things happen in that. We prepare for drills. We review changes of first responder protocols. So something that's happened over many years, unfortunately, is that first responders, I mean, the field really learns from different incidents that happen around the country. And they will change protocols from time to time. And so part of those meetings are us learning what the changes are and incorporating them with it. We also share any updates about school emergency plans with the police department, and fire have those on file. So we have, detailed emergency plans for each school at a number of areas. And then, as I said, also part of that's prepared for annual drills. So that's part of the preparedness with our emergency personnel. The other place is regular communication with our colleagues in the police department about things that are coming up, that are bubbling up, maybe it's school-based, it might be something that's local, a risk, a threat, a concern, might be something that's happening on social media, nationally, that sort of thing, that's a risk or a threat. And so we're in regular communication on those levels. And that might be principal talking or teacher talking to school resource officer, all the way to me talking to chief of police. And I just want folks to know that those very open lines of communication. And also just great support. There's just a great working relationship. I want folks to know that isn't always the case. It's notable to say that. We can just pause there. We're going to go into training and facilities in a moment, but I want to pause there and see if folks have any questions. In terms of training, so the first one's really important. So we have fire drills, evacuation drills, and also drills for intruders, okay? Those have changed over time, over the years. Developmentally appropriate is what's crucial, okay? We can speak in ways and tell high school students and different things than we tell elementary school students, okay? Which you do when you're teaching or when you're coaching or anything, right? That makes a lot of sense. But we're also very, very aware that any of it can really throw a student or staff member, honestly. And so we're very conscious of what language we use, and changed the language we've used in terms of preparing staff over the years, and have changed language that we use in terms of talking to kids about it as well. Especially at the high school, staff will typically will usually give folks a heads up something's coming, okay? But at the high school, typically there's instructions that are happening, with students in advance, that sort of thing, that are clear. Because the drills that we might do at high school are a little more complex than the drills we might do at elementary school, that sort of thing. An important piece on that is that whenever we're doing drills, whether that's a fire drill or an intruder drill, the police or fire have a team on site who are observing and watching and seeing how things go. Then they give us feedback on how well that was done and what we can improve. That sort of thing. So then the last piece is facilities. So as you know, but just to tell the public as well, the entry into security upgrades at O'Malley and JHS to match what exists in West Parish. Those are complete. The new consolidated ETS Vets building will have similar safety features at the entryway and around the building. And then one very important piece, really crucial piece, is that ensuring all doors are working properly and they're locked during school hours. One thing we've really just recently sort of raised to a very high level is, and changed our protocols on, is if there's any non-working exterior doors for any reason, that could be electronically, that could be just a lock, that could be a fixture, whatever it is, okay? And any principal hears about those, as soon as they hear about it, they contact me, and this is directed to DPW immediately, and we escalate that so that it happened that day. And that a recent example of that was just here at the high school on Friday, and within a half an hour, we had folks on site fixing it. So that's just a simple change that we can, can do and are doing. And then always continue to remind folks that propping doors open is just absolutely not allowed and can't be tolerated. And it's something that happens in schools, unfortunately. And it's now, we're making it clear to staff that any doors that are propped open, the propping of doors is subject to progressive discipline for all employees. That's just a new thing put into place like right now, or just this week, after talking to our union partners. And then part of that also then is making sure that we have good access to the doors we need to. And so some changes will happen on that, whether that's keys to folks or whether it's key card access. So I'll give you one example here that we're working on right now is at the athletics hallway, in the athletics hallway here in the high school, making that has key card access at the end of that hallway. So there's some change that'll happen on that we're working on, but just want to make sure we escalate any concern about doors, really quickly.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
specific about the athletic door? I know this is like specific to when the school day is in session, but that athletic door, when there are events or practices, is wide open. And so I'm wondering if we can have just a conversation with the athletic director on how we can better manage that.
Yeah. So, and there are other conversations for, how to use the doors at West Parish, because the way they were designed, or which ones to use as primary access, and the way that actually it turns out it's best to use them in terms of primary access. So there has to be some adjustments at a door there. Okay. So, but those are the conversations now we have to have in order to make sure that, and the key card access at that particular door here is one of those steps in that. And then also it's talking to a principal, athletic director, a food service manager, how they need to use the door, and how we can make sure it's locked, but then we can have folks who need access to that can get access when they need it.
So I guess specifically, that door is used by students coming and going from the athletic building in off hours, and so it's often open.
Right, no, I understand that.
Yeah, okay.
I get that.
Okay,
yeah.
so because I'm assuming they're not gonna have key
No,
card
right,
access.
and that's
so-
why talking to understand exactly how is it used,
Yeah, got
and to what extent, not only what extent, but like, in what ways can we make it so it's secure?
Yeah.
It has to be secure, but understanding the use of it, right?
Yeah.
And so.
Got it, thanks.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention something that had happened a few years ago, where there was a medical situation in our schools, and the term that was used was sheltering in place. And I think through that, we learned that the more appropriate term is learning in place, like, keep kids in their classrooms, if a medical emergency can be dealt with, because a term like sheltering in place sends up an alarm.
Yes.
But learning in place, everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think all these learning things to kind of keep anxiety down and be as informative as we can for families and things.
Yes, and that's a really good example of how, protocol change, language change on this, because we learn more and just that example of learning in place with that example of a medical emergency, that's really for two things, right? One, for obviously privacy of the individual and make sure they get the right care, but also that it can be very, alarming or disturbing or just, nerve-wracking for any child, especially for any aged person to, see a medical emergency, right? So we're thinking of both sides, right? It's very important. All right, going more to some more health stuff, but this is, we have gotten 2 straight weeks of my favorite data, which is,
It's back.
the fecal matter wastewater testing results. You can see downward trend in Gloucester, which is great. And that is, as it always does, it's reflected in our total case count here. You can see over the past just a few weeks, we're down to 9 total cases across our schools. Still keeping track of things the same way we have, since well, I guess since earlier this year, when we sort of really instituted the on-site, the take-home testing as well as pool testing. There's just the blow by blow, week by week since October of total cases. So you see 9, we're essentially at our lowest state, which was matched in early March and matched in in early fall. But as we had hoped, quite low. Still cases popping, as everyone knows, we've been getting cases popping up and down, here. We hear that, and then I read in the papers for what it's worth. New England is going down in general, but there's still places in Massachusetts which are pretty high. But that's not the case in Boston. This is just as I've been showing you, sort of the regular testing, and obviously still consistent in how many folks we're testing each week in terms of the actual number of tests. And then you see there the positive found this week so far are a total of 5. Which is good. The last piece is just as to check in with any questions about COVID and the case count. Okay, all good news. Yes, hurrah, hurrah. Okay. Last piece is the superintendent's evaluation process. Just to check in, because it says here June 8th. Check in on progress, discuss process. Any questions about that for you folks to discuss? And then you have a deadline as well, but that's your deadline, not mine. But just want to, as we said, give you the opportunity to check in and see how things are going.
Yeah, and I did have a question of clarification of the forms, and on page 3 of the form, it seemed, it has kind of blank lines as to goals, and we need to that will be filled in on the template so that they'll reflect the superintendent's goals line by line, so that it's clear on the evaluation form where we would put that information.
So we'll get a new template?
Yeah, we'll update the template that's in the drive.
Okay.
Okay.
You just go to the drive, and so Kathy, Stephanie, and I will just update that tomorrow morning, and it's essentially the same except for that's that one
That's
page, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I've been accessing that from your email. Yeah, me too. That form, not Ben's whole drive of
Right.
evidence, but where on the drive would that be?
It's in the same folder. Those, so I can show it to you.
The folder that you sent. And what I've always done is download the form, so I'm working on my own version of the form, right? So I would then just, take the new form and download that form to work locally on my computer. So I like to do things. And if there's an update like that, then I would either figure out if I want to copy and paste the information into my form, or take the new form and start
Looking
and move things over.
So
Copy and paste into the new form.
I'm seeing where you are, Ben.
yeah, so shoot, let me see if I can zoom in here some, just so this is the folder you have access to.
Yep.
There's the evidence folder in that, there's the goals and evidence, which is just that the sheet I gave you with the link to it, okay? That's just a copy of my goals, the original document. This is the rubric, and then this is the summary of the evaluation form, which you can download as a Word document and fill in as needed. I'm a little concerned that what you emailed earlier on, did you re-email this one? Because remember that there's this.
You said that was the rubrics, which was updated, not.
Oh, you're right,
Yeah.
not the form, the form is always been right. So the form that Kathy emailed you earlier on is this same form.
Okay.
That is also right. So if you're using that from the email, you're right on target.
Wait, can you, but, okay, got it.
But
But you haven't changed it yet,
No, right, and what we're just gonna essentially copy and paste
those goals.
Yes.
my goal, the goals that you know, that we agreed upon into this page right here.
Right, okay.
That's all. That's the only change you're gonna see.
Yeah.
You also might just, so that's clear, right? In terms of just this one page will change, nothing else is gonna change. What I will do, I did for last year was, I actually specifically pointed out to some of the indicators as focus indicators, okay? All right, I didn't do that this year. Well, I'll just show you what I did, so I'm not just speaking, you know, what I think you can see this on your screen. I just gave you the standards that were connected to these goals.
I see.
Okay, so the standard is the high, you know, is these, you know, broader categories. And so tomorrow morning, and that just, you know, it helps you connect the dots in terms of the specifics of any of these indicators that I think is really connected to, you know, the work we've been doing. It's not essential. I think it's gonna be helpful to you to some degree. That's all.
So just, can I ask a question? So on the page you're on right now.
Yeah.
Just looking at this focus indicator, check if yes. At the bottom of.
Yeah,
each
yeah.
one.
So we'll check those in some way.
So that's gonna be on the new document.
Yeah, it'll be this, you'll just,
It'll be this document with updates.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
That's
just gotta
fantastic.
figure out how to check those easily.
Yeah, I was able to do that by erasing that and then,
Yeah.
yeah, anyway.
This form is really
It's awesome, isn't it?
challenging. I'm sure my head exploded when I saw it. I was like,
Somebody would have made it.
Right, so right, because these are checkboxes, right?
they're supposed to be.
But you can delete them and just put your own X.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think I just,
I'll let you guys
I
know.
highlighted that last year.
Yeah.
I highlighted.
All in the works.
Anyway, on the Mac, you can-
Mac is really challenging, use this.
Oh, really? Okay, what I'm saying that is.
you don't have to do it.
Okay, and then along that same, along this topic, we need to negotiate with the superintendent his next contract by the end of the school year. So I would like to suggest that there's a personnel meeting on Monday, June 26th, where we discuss that. And then a full school committee meeting on the 28th, which would be a one-item agenda.
So the Monday in June is the 27th.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm unavailable, so I'm to.
You're
Where to?
available? Yeah, 27th and 29th.
So if Maria's not available and Laura's not available, so.
You can work through that,
Okay,
not
not on camera.
without struggle, okay? We can do it.
Oh, wait, what time would it be, the personnel meeting?
I'm,
I just,
oh wait, am I
I
in that meeting?
have to be in Danvers by
Okay.
7:15. So I'd have to leave here by 6:45.
I think it'll be okay.
5 o'clock.
The additional meeting, you said it was the 28th?
29th, so
Yeah, no, okay. I don't know why I write down 28th.
29th at 6.
If I said my anniversary was the 29th, we do it on the 28th. I said my anniversary was on the 29th, could do it on the 28th. If I said my anniversary was on the
your
29th,
wedding.
could do it on the 28th.
Dream 12 and set your anniversary.
Did you confirm that in collaboration? I'm hesitant.
Anyway,
I'm
let's-
hesitant to give Trina any of your contact information, just for the record, okay?
Okay, so anyway, we can figure out, but we do need to have a meeting that week, so we can iron that out, make sure everybody's available.
Melissa's
And
there.
Melissa would like to say something.
No, it's just a suggestion that we do it as a school committee as a whole in executive session at our last Wednesday of the month meeting. Because we're all gonna weigh in on it anyway.
On the 22nd?
No, I think, don't we have a meeting the last Wednesday of the month as well?
No,
It's the
Oh, I
27th.
thought we did. I thought we were doing something that week. So if you have a personnel meeting, when is the school committee approving it? In August?
no, the following, 2 days later.
So that would be the last Wednesday. So they're trying to figure out now if to have a meeting on the last Wednesday. One isn't scheduled now. Does that make sense?
I thought the personnel meeting was the last Monday of the month.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, yes, that's what we're
So
trying.
If you have it that Monday, the school committee isn't going to get it until when? We're not meeting in July, so it wouldn't be approved until August.
I'm suggesting we schedule the Monday and the Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday.
Okay, so that's what I thought. So I'm suggesting that you don't have just a personnel meeting and have the full school committee meeting on the Wednesday, and we can do it in executive session because everyone weighs in on the superintendent's contract.
So one meeting.
Yeah, one meeting.
Is that okay?
Well, I'm hearing that there's struggles for the Monday attendance and with
Right.
Maria and Laura.
So-
So since we're all gonna have a say in this, it just would make sense to do it that Wednesday as a group.
Well, Wednesday is
Or Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, if people are okay on a Tuesday.
Sure.
I'm not, but I'm at town Monday and Tuesday, so you guys can.
You're right.
So why not Wednesday? Why are we doing Tuesday?
No, Wednesday can be done.
Really?
Can do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I don't know.
there-
How about Thursday?
But wait, if we're in executive session, then not, would be part of it or not part of it?
I didn't be part of it at some point.
Right, but not the initial, right?
Right. Yeah, we'll
We'll
figure that out for you.
yeah, but just everyone has a heads up that's what you're trying to accomplish, and then we'll through the details short, as soon as possible.
Okay, and it's 2 weeks away, so. Okay. Thank you for your superintendent's report. Okay, there have been no subcommittee meetings since our last school committee meeting, so there are no reports. Under action, we have approval of policies, which is the second reading of the revised attendance policy file JE. And I know the superintendent and assistant superintendent have done a lot of work to kind of reorganize and make it in the format we want.
You want us to present what change, we could probably have Greg summarize just the changes that have been made, which are more in format than substance. In fact, they are all in format rather than substance. You are,
Yeah, they're, well, not entirely. There's some content that is new. Sorry, 1 second.
Do you need to share it?
uh,
I'm not sure if I need to share, but everybody has copies. Okay. The first thing that I did was to pull out all of the things that are related to Mass General Law and are required. And those are all now in policy JE. And those include a very brief introduction, but then under the heading state laws governing student attendance, that's where we see parent guardian responsibilities, school notification requirements, and then
sorry.
new content. I noted in some policies, but not in others across the district, absence of students due to religious beliefs. I put that in, ran it by our attorney. And he said it was absolutely appropriate to be in there. Habitually truant and CRA and dropping out of school, the legal references are all at the bottom. And that constitutes the 3-page policy JE that is strictly about all the relevant attendance laws.
And then just the JEE is like the,
JEE is what initially I was thinking of would be an exhibit, but it still goes in the manual as a in the policy manual. But we can think of it as the exhibit that is the guide for creating the entries in the handbooks, which you approve annually. So you have a chance to take a look at it, the product of the results of the attendance teams as they put the operational procedures and protocols together. So you'll see that file JE-E is the guidance for creating operational procedures and protocols for inclusion in student and parent handbooks. And this includes the relevant information from the original policy that creates the case for and the guiding principles and the goals and some of the requirements to guide those teams. So they will refer to these when creating their protocols and procedures for their handbooks, which you will then have an opportunity to approve as part of the handbook approval. This year, that will happen separately because they will be creating that piece. But in the future, in the spring, you'll see it as part of the handbooks. So this guide includes terminology, guidance, the multi-tiered system of supports information that is not necessarily something you need in your primary attendance policy relevant to the laws. And then you'll note that I added on at the very end, the 2 paragraphs, operational procedure and protocol guide should be completed for school committee approval and inclusion in student parent handbooks. This year, we're shooting for the August 12th meeting. So it'll be the last one that will allow them to include it in the digital handbooks. And then in the subsequent years, it will be part of the regular annual approval. And final line is that the operational procedure and protocol guides should be designed at the school level to comply with Gloucester School Committee Attendance Policy JE. So they should make sure that when using these principles, practices, and goals, that they are also making sure that it complies with the final JE. So that's how we decided to approach this challenge, where there's a lot of procedural protocol information that should go in the handbooks, but we want to memorialize that and make sure that that is followed when they create it.
Thank you for that. But so JE, the laws.
Yep.
Will become, once we have our policy, that will become like once those policies are written by the attendance teams.
The procedures.
Procedures, right, yeah.
Right.
That's the distinction. Yeah.
Right, so that those procedures will be part of JE.
JE on July 1st will be the school committee's policy around attendance, and that legally covers us,
I see.
and we're in compliance with the laws.
And there are
We
procedures.
have to have that policy at the school district level in the school committee handbook. So, policy manual. So JE becomes policy effective July 1st. Regardless of anything else that happens, that policy is there.
And just the policy, as everyone knows, lays out the framework for the procedures and work, right? And I want to point out two very important pieces in the policy in JE, okay? One, all the state laws, okay, obviously, but the other piece is on the first page underneath the numbered list 1 through 4, okay? I mean, introduction, yes, but particularly the paragraph right after the bulleted list that begins the Gloucester Public Schools and policy and operating procedure to establish a tiered system of support.
Mhm.
That's the basis of all of the shift in approach that we're doing. Not in the shift in the approach in the original version, the first one was all laid out very specifically here. You see the specifics in JEE, the procedures, but the framework for it as in the policy is that paragraph for them. What's important for that is that the school committee then is saying, this is the direction we want it to be done. In that introduction.
The procedures, specific procedures that come out of the attendance teams,
You will vote on, because those are put in the
and
handbook,
those go in the handbook, they
and
don't.
you vote on them in that.
Got it. Thank you.
And they have been there for years. That's where they end up. And we've also had, they're sort of, the foundational policy has always been in the school committee policy manual as well. So we're continuing that pattern, but with JEE that provides more clear guidance when you're developing your annual policy, your procedures and protocols in your handbooks.
So with that description, we have the policy. Let's discuss the policy first. Oh, Melissa?
Thank you. So I just have a question. So the JEE, will that go away once the policy and procedures are in place? Will that incorporate the language necessary into the policy and procedures? Not the policy, the procedures. In other words, we're not going to have JEE, and the procedures, correct? We should just have the policy and then the procedures. Once they're done.
The intention that I have here is that the JE and JEE will stay in the school committee policy manual. And the actual procedures they need to stay there so that each year, as a school revisits their actual nuts and bolts policies, this will happen so many days. These are the kinds of things that parents need to do, that those could always have a reference until it's changed at the school committee level, both in the JE and JEE. So those will both remain at the district policy manual level. And then the operational procedures and protocols have yet to be developed. And those may be subject to modification within the parameters that are outlined here in these actual, the JE and JEE. That those will continue to guide the development of the detail level that's going to appear in the handbooks.
So Greg, let me ask you this. This is great work. I'm just trying to follow process here. So when you read policy manuals in all school districts, they're set up the same. They all have the same policy lettering. Do we have other policies that have an exhibit, as you say, in our manual? Because that doesn't seem the norm in all the policy manuals I've read, because I've read a lot of different school manuals for different reasons in the past. And I've never seen exhibits in a policy manual. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're consistent with the rules that are set out as you develop a policy manual. I understand the importance of the language and what the intent is. And that's why I asked, my question was, when we do get to the procedures, because those are common to be in policy manuals, will the EE be incorporated into the procedures so that it captures the intention and the procedures? Or are we doing something different in our policy manual that other schools don't?
When
That's
you're
what I'm trying to get at.
when you're saying will JEE appear in the procedures, are you saying will that appear in the handbooks? Because that's where the procedures are going to appear.
No, so we have a policy manual that's online.
Yep.
And that's where policies and procedures are as well. That's our policy and procedure manual. I'm not too concerned about the handbooks because that's a reference for students, but we have a policy manual that's on file. And it's set up similar as other school districts, that the A's, the B's, the C's, they're all the same in all the school districts. And what I'm saying is, in other manuals, because I've read many, they have the policy and then they give the procedures to that policy on some occasions. So I'm not talking about handbooks right now. I'm talking about our policy manual. So will the JE-E turn into the policy, I'm sorry, I keep saying policy, the procedures to the policy JE? Once it's developed.
I'm a little confused because the directive at the last meeting, as I understood it, was that the policy was incorporating both policy and procedures, and that those needed to be separated or removed. So the work was done to do that and separated in what I felt was the most logical way of sort of separating law and procedure. I see no reason why JE and JE-E can't coexist in a policy manual. It's not written as it doesn't say exhibit, it incorporates things that could be contained in a single policy. We do have policies in our own handbook that mix policy and protocols and procedures. We have a number of those. So this seemed to be an approach that would sort of logically separate some of those procedural kinds of things from the laws themselves.
No,
And
so
it's not gonna be
let me do this, Fred, because this is excellent work. I'm not saying what you did is different than what I expected. This is what I expected. So I see that JE is our policy, that is the policy. And you labeled the backup to it as JE-E. So that's what's throwing me off. I understand it's separate, but what I'm asking is, will the second part of it become the language in the procedures? Or another question to ask is, do we have this type of supporting document with any other of our policies? Because I've never.
We definitely have it for building use. We have our building use policy and our building use procedures.
Right, and that's how we have it with our bullying policy as well, right? That's very common. But this JE-E isn't procedures yet, because we haven't been developed, and I'm assuming that it's going to turn into the procedures once the work is done.
So I think there's a both and here. I think, Melissa, I think you're right on that the JE isn't a typical procedures document. It's something a little bit different, right? Sort of in between, right? You know?
Because we're not there yet.
Right, and that's why there's a little confusion here, I believe, right? Because it's a little bit in between, no big deal.
Exactly.
But I do think that when we have the procedure, so as you've heard Greg say, the next step on this, once you get approval on this, the next step is to actually develop the operating procedures, right? We can incorporate that into the policy manual, just like, you know, if we need to, or we want to, if you want to, the school committee, and we'll also have that in the handbooks as well, which you also vote on. So I think it's important to have, and I think, you know, Greg, tell me if you agree on this one, to have JE as it is in the policy manual. It really sets out, you know, it's sort of like, you know, just on this, because attendance is like really complicated at many levels. It sort of sets out all parts of it, you know. So that's, and I don't know if that's okay with you, Melissa, I'd like folks just to hear, but that's what I'm saying is like, we have, you know, all of it ultimately into the policy manual, and then also the procedures that are still to be developed in there, as well as in the handbooks. A way to go forward?
Yeah, and if the procedures get more firmed up, as they firmed up, this may get revoted to reflect what's decided.
Yeah, you could revote that, right? You also vote for the handbooks as well.
Right.
Yeah, there are some options there. Yeah.
But tonight, we're approving the framework and the guidance that
Yeah, and if you
lays out
want to incorporate what the attendance teams do, and you decide that should be more than just in the handbooks, that's fine.
Okay, so let's just take up the policy. Does anybody have any questions, comments on the policy? Because it is the language we had in our previous school committee meeting, and it's a different format. Melissa?
I just have one suggestion, and it's not changing the language, it's just changing the order of paragraphs, which is on the last page in page 3. Under the habitually truant students and CRA. When I read this, it makes sense to do the first paragraph stay the same, and then that third paragraph become the second paragraph, because you're introducing what a CRA is. And then the language to follow that talks about whether the school district will file one or not. But other than that, I think it's excellent work.
Objection? Okay. I just have one thing on the previous page at the top, parent guardian responsibilities. Calling the school at a designated number at a designated time. Should it be and designated time? That's a semantic thing. But the other thing is, it says, as established by the school committee to report a child's absence and reason for it. We, school committee, does not really dictate the times that the schools themselves want those notifications.
So then.
So I would end it, or, designated time as established by, I would say, the superintendent. Because you would then direct
right.
your,
Would direct the principals to determine that and have that be in the handbooks.
yeah, it's an
Sure.
operational,
So just say, calling school at designated time, and designated, number and time, and designated time, as established by the superintendent.
and you want to say to report a child's absence and reason for it, you want to keep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to approve the second reading
So moved.
Second.
As amended?
as amended?
So moved.
Do we need to waive another reading of it? This was our second.
So, no, things that we do too, no?
No, I think,
Like, I
because
waived
it's an
reading of
amended, because it's an amended policy, we don't do two full readings, right, Melissa?
We can do a motion to waive the reading.
that. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Okay. So we want to do that first before we take it together?
And we waive the reading.
Second,
Maria, roll call vote?
Ms. Watson,
yes.
Ms. Mason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Back to the other motion that was moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Mason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
So now we have the attendance policy procedures, JB-E. Does anyone have questions or changes? Okay. I see none. I have one question, well, comment, I guess. Underneath attendance failure policy, the second paragraph, it says the current attendance failure policy at Gloucester High School will be eliminated. I think we should say is eliminated, because once we adopted it, I don't know, you tell me. This is guidance, right? So when will it be, or it should say will be eliminated effective what?
Yeah, it's will be because it goes into, I think we had discussed by the end of the first term.
Right, so will be effective what, during fall 2000?
Yeah.
So but will be eliminated by second term of the 2022 school year?
Yeah, I think that's what we had in originally. I'm not sure
Do you,
where that went, but yeah, that's the intention.
do we hamstring ourselves by putting a time on it? I just, in the interest of,
You also create a deadline.
right, so it's both,
I think also this is informative for parents too.
right, so it's both, right, so then if it doesn't happen,
Eliminated,
could create
that's a-
confusion.
With a different deadline.
Or do you wanna say before?
According to the principal, that's a deadline that they intend to meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the amendment is just will be eliminated
By
by,
the end of the first term of the 2022-2023 school year, by the end of the first term. I'm using red language here, that's not a picture of that. 2023 school year.
okay,
We use the language end of the first quarter of the 22-23 school year.
We said end of the first term.
End of the first term of the 2022-2023 school year.
Right, but what I'm saying is in that exact same paragraph, we have something else that says end of the first quarter of the 22-23 school year. So let's just be consistent.
So, but that's a different piece, because I think if I'm reading this properly, it's okay, but
It's a different piece, but is it, are we talking at the same timing?
no, actually, Greg, you went about this, and the second part, which is creating the operational committee to develop trauma-informed engagement protocols, that the committee is developed by the first quarter, right? Those two separate things.
It's quarter and.
One moment.
different.
Tenants failure policy, page. Under section C, tenants failure policy, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, current tenants failure policy will be eliminated. Shall form, Gloucester High School shall form a policy operational committee to develop trauma-informed engagement protocols to improve attendance and chronic absence for implementation by the end of the first quarter of the 2023 school year for inclusion. That is, it is two things that are combined there.
Right.
That the policy is going, the committee will meet this summer. And they are going to develop, there are multiple things happening that may involve, all of the protocols and procedures we were talking about. Those would be implemented by the end of the first quarter, because if something is approved, August 12th for handbooks, the likelihood of being able to put that immediately into action for the first day of school, I wanted to leave enough time to do that. So those changes to be ready by the end of the quarter, to take effect by the quarter, include the attendance failure policy.
So it is the same time.
It's all, it's the
Okay,
attendance
that's-
failure policy and the operational protocols and procedures will be implemented. They're gonna plan this summer.
Right, so it's that same language of
So
time.
it's contained in that.
Yeah, but what she's saying is we said end of the first term, this says end of the first quarter.
I just think it should be.
Yeah, semester is 2 terms, quarter and term are,
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should use one or the other.
okay.
That's,
Oh, that's, sorry, this is one I shouldn't have been thinking about.
Do we use term elsewhere? Because
No, so
You
you're
just
saying
said it.
term and quarter synonymous?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's use quarter.
well, quarters are already in there. What we would be doing then is, though they're contained in the same paragraph, it's not,
we can say it twice.
you could make it more explicit. It's contained in the directive to change it by
Right,
that.
essentially what we did was, it was already in there for the timeline for the attendance failure policy. Because
Right.
you think the whole paragraph is one.
Yeah.
So leave it the way.
So we just leave it the
And
way
I
it is.
just take off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
I think it's
So
contained as it
It was
is.
already embedded in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to approve file JE-E?
You need to waive the first reading, waive the actual reading.
Oh.
Well, this is procedures. Yeah, we should waive the reading because this was part of what we waived for the first time. We then separated it.
I move we waive the reading policy JE.
Second. Melissa?
I just want to clarify, are we calling this a policy?
I think it should say attendance procedure instead of
Okay.
policy.
File JE.
Thank you.
Right.
File JE.
Sure.
File.
So the top gets changed to procedure.
That's fine.
or attendance policy procedure.
Do you need to give another motion?
No, I got it.
Okay. We may vote.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes. Excellent work, everybody that was involved.
So we just wait.
Right, so I move that we accept attendance procedure, don't we have to accept this too?
Approve.
Approve, right, so I move that we approve attendance procedure J.
No more discussion. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Excellent work all around. For a long time, I know it's been a lot of very thoughtful work.
So there was no amendments to JEP.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Amy, Cam. She's
Cam,
still-
definitely. She is, I believe she's listening.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy, Cam.
Okay.
And James Cook.
James
a long
Cook.
time as well.
And yeah, I'm sure. We get it, yeah. Okay, so we have a request for an out-of-state field trip that just popped up that Greg is going to explain, and I would hope we would agree to discuss and approve if we are comfortable approving this, because timing is of the essence, and just received it. Okay, and it's in your email as of 6 tonight. So you want to explain?
Sure. This is, came in very recently because the logistics, I don't need to go into too much detail, but our biology teacher, Eric Lee, was extremely persistent in making this happen. And that involved working with the organization that worked with the schools and our students for 2.5 weeks. Got a grant from the Department of Defense to do if there's a description in very small type down at the bottom of the first page. Students completed a 2.5-week advanced study in regenerative cell culture and were the winning group from all the biology classes. They presented in front of industry experts from Gloucester Genomics Institute and ARMY, which is the acronym for the organization that received the grant from DoD, and they were selected as winners. So this program, it worked with all of our students to explore regenerative cell culture. I'll give an example of it very briefly. Students learned a lot about the technology, and then had to dream up and design their own product that would use this kind of cell culture. And so, for example, to grow your own, I'm sharing this because it was really cool stuff that was happening at the high school recently, to grow tissue in an artificial, in a cultured tissue that could be used for skin grafting, for example. That's one of the technologies. So students learned all about the connections between the science and industry and bringing a product to market and that whole cycle. And they then had to do a pitch in front of industry experts. So groups of students dreamed up their product, researched the viability, did some marketing around it, and then presented it. The winners here at the school were promised a trip to go to Manchester, New Hampshire, to go to the life science labs at the University of New Hampshire, and also it's called the ARMY. That's where they work in conjunction with it. It's only for 5 students, 2 teachers, and the Department of Defense grant is providing the funding for the transportation to go there. It just came in. It would be, in my opinion, a real shame to disappoint the students who have worked really hard, and they just completed this project. So it's it's hot off the presses.
Questions? Seeing none. Sounds like an awesome opportunity.
Great, I'll let them know, thank you.
Okay, so we shall vote, please.
I need a motion.
Oh, we need to make a motion to,
Motion to approve the field trip, for this particular group to facility in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Second.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Sounds great. Okay. So we move on to other business discussion, East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee meeting, committee update.
Much news there I can think of.
We have a meeting tomorrow at 5, regular monthly building committee meeting. The project manager has been sending out notices when there's been extended work, just like they've been doing. So I think there's another one coming up next week, next Monday, maybe.
And these are the concrete pours for the concrete for a level, like all the second floor. You know, and this will be the 5th one. They all always happen, sort of all day long tonight. Advanced warning, and there hasn't been any concerns voiced to the project team about when they. I have another building thing to just give you an update on. Happened today, which is good news.
This is other business, go ahead.
So I learned today that the modulars at Beaman will also be refurbished this summer. I was sort of touch and go on it, really thought it wasn't going to happen. And so part of that,
You mean Plumco.
what did I say?
You said Beaman.
Sorry, Beaman and Plumco will both be done.
Yeah.
That's great. So, yeah, so we thought for a while just with Beaman. And so BNF, I'll give them more of an update on just all the, we have like nicely laid out details of what will be happening. We did visits, we mean the project managers, Paul Russo, the custodial supervisor, and then each, head custodian in each building, plus myself, did walk through some of the classrooms to understand exactly what needed to be packed up and moved away from the walls, that sort of thing. So we can give the teachers instructions before they go. The good news for everyone is that rooms not having packed up and totally moved out. Just a waste from some exterior walls they're working on. I'll give you just a full update in my next year's report about the details of what's happening in each school. It's going to make it's quite a bit better just in terms of weeks. Make sure that the envelope is not a sip.
Go ahead.
Will that update, when you give it, include the playground updates?
Yeah, yep, and we're making progress on that as well.
Our next, so I just want to put it out there that we're thinking of the possibility of having our first August meeting on August 3rd instead of the 10th. Because the superintendent may be away on that, for that meeting. So we can talk about that next time. So just have it in your head that, and it will have been a break from, whole month of July. So we will move that meeting up just 1 week, and then we have a few weeks in between. So we can talk about that. It's not set in stone. But that's what we have there. All right. I think we're done. If anybody wants to.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
and Ms. Prince.
Yes, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Are we all?
And go Celtics.
Yeah, oh yeah.